Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be diving back into some of the Linux commands. These commands will help you get back on track while you're working with Linux on the terminal. These commands which we would be discussing today, which would include sudo, nano, and several other more. So let's get to it. In this case, I'm already located in the YouTube directory for the purposes of this video, and these are the contents of my directory where I will be demonstrating these commands. The first command that I will be executing is sudo. Sudo command is an incredible command because it lets you run certain commands. You can basically club this along with other commands in order for you to run these commands at a higher elevated privilege. Let's say in this scenario, I want to update the apps on my system. In this case, I will write sudo app update. In this case, this is WSL, so it shouldn't take too much time. So in this case, it will go and get information through the archives or available at Ubuntu, and basically it will get the details updated. While this is running, I would like to explain a little bit more about sudo. In this case, the command that I have executed is sudo update. So sudo basically stands for super user do. It allows a permitted user to execute commands as a super user or another user as specified by the security policy. It might depend on the system you're working in. If you're working at a workplace environment, it might be different, but on your personal computer, this would run just fine. Apt update basically is a command that updates the package index files from their sources. It's necessary to run these before upgrading the packages and ensure that you have the latest information. As you can see, the update has completed. Similarly, if for example, if you do not have certain applications installed on your WSL, you can write sudo apt install vim. In this case, I am just trying to install the vim text editor. You can try it with other text editors as well, but the format will not change. The syntax will not change. So sudo apt install vim. In this case, I have already done that. So you can see that it basically lists the packages, checks for the dependency trees where the particular latest version is available, and basically goes and gets that request processed, and you basically get the data supplied to you through the internet, and yeah, you basically have your package updated. Sudo basically also allows you to edit certain files which might require higher admin authority. For example, if you are trying to edit a bash file, the bash source file, you will write bash nano dot bash rc file. Bash rc file. In this scenario, nano basically is the text editor which basically opens the .bash source file, and you can only do that with the help of sudo. In this scenario, this is WSL, so it's not a surprise that it's empty. In order to exit the nano text editor, you press Ctrl and X. However, if you have made certain edits, you will have to press Y. It will ask you whether you would like to save before you exit. In that scenario, if you would like to update it, you will press Y. Similarly, we will move on to other aspects. As I mentioned, sudo command, it basically allows you to unlock super user powers, so you can basically perform administrative tasks which a regular user is not usually accustomed to, so you basically get elevated privileges. Moving on to nano, as you might have already seen the nano editor. Nano editor basically allows you to edit files directly from the terminal. So let's say if I have let's say in this scenario, I have an example.txt file. The example.txt file basically consists of a list of fruits. So if you type nano example.txt, it will open it up in the nano text editor window, and you will see the list of fruits. So nano basically launches the nano text editor. Example.txt will be the file that we want to edit. If this particular file does not exist, nano basically would create it and this would be saved as a file once you exit it, provided that you save the file. In this scenario, let's say I would like to type in a new, let's say new, let's say we can type in pineapple. It's not there on the list. Let's say now I would like to close. So if you like to save it, whether do you want to? In this scenario, I would like to. You press Y, and when you exit, you press Ctrl X. Sorry, you press Enter. So, sorry about that. But in this scenario, it will be saved. In order to visualize whether this particular entry has been saved or not, you press cat example.txt. You can see that pineapple has been entered. So the basic gist is that the command would open example.txt in nano editor, and then you can start modifying. Once you have made the modification, you press Ctrl plus X, and at that point it will ask you whether you want to save the changes. At that point you basically press Y or yes. Upon doing that, you would be provided with more options, but if you want to exit out into the terminal again, you press Enter. So once you do that, all your modifications will be saved. In this case, let's again do this with a new file. Let's say nano new file.txt. So this file doesn't exist. So let's say I have done that. So yeah, I guess it's an empty file, and we can edit it in nano. So we can type I am writing into new file with nano text editor. Yeah, so let's try to exit. Control Y, press enter, and then that particular entry has been saved. You can see. So this is a quick way to get started at creating certain files which you want to do directly through the terminal. The same process can be applied, as I have already demonstrated, with bash files. You can write sudo nano.bash source file. Editing system files basically requires these kinds of super user privileges. So you basically club sudo and nano commands together. So you basically get these elevated permissions, and then you can basically save the changes of these sensitive system configuration files, and then you're good to go. You would probably be doing these kinds of saves on these configuration files once you start installing certain software such as Spark, Apache Spark, Zookeeper, and so on. Let's say in this scenario, I would like to create a new script file as .sh bash file. Let's type nano script.sh, and I enter. And let's say, and then I would like to call the shebang. Let's type in bash. Type that, and after that you move on and type echo hello world. And then you basically exit. You basically like X, save the modifications, and after you have done this, you have saved the file successfully. You can basically execute this file with bash. As you can see, that particular script can be executed. So bash basically lets you execute any bash related script files which end with .sh. So you can see how powerful some small commands, when they are clubbed together, basically allows you to make on the fly edits on your texts, and this can directly be done on the terminal. Therefore you do not need a GUI, as some users mostly are spoiled today because of Windows. So this is the best use case of these commands when they are applied together. It's perfectly useful for quick fixes whenever you need to create or edit certain scripts, or we need to make changes to configuration files. So yeah, that's kind of useful. Moving on to ID. So ID is a command which basically gives you the user ID, the UID, or the group ID, the GID, and the group memberships. So this basically displays, in this scenario, if I type ID and execute it on the terminal, it will display the details of the current user. If I do that, you can see that the user ID is Linux, the GID is Linux. In this case, this is on WSL, so you won't see that much differences. Not nothing surprising, but if you work on computer systems on company or some other workplaces in an institute, this would definitely be different. So the ID basically prints information about the current user. By default, it will show you the user ID, the GID, and the group memberships. It basically gives you a quick overview of your user identity and the groups, and it allows you to manage permissions and accesses. If you want to specifically look at certain users which might be on your network, in this case I'm on a single network, nobody is there, so if I can type user, sorry, UID Linux, so that's the user ID of my user ID in this scenario. So you will see that the same details are again displayed. Obviously this will not be the same. In this case, Linux is just an arbitrary username that I have assigned. In this scenario, if you are demonstrating this, it will change. The variation of ID command basically allows you to view the UID, GID, and the group memberships of specified users. It is basically very essential that system administrators know this, because you need to check the permissions for different users. Group membership can also be checked into by the help of ID if you combine it with GID and the flag G and N. When you do that, in this case, you basically see information associated with that. The -G basically is an option that prints all the groups a user is a member of. And the N option basically prints the group's names instead of the IDs. Let's say if I type like this, you see the IDs. But so as a user, I have access to Linux, administration, dialog, CD-ROM, floppy, and so on. So yeah, if you do not use without N, if you do not use these flags together sensibly, you will get ID values which will not make much sense. So this command basically lists the groups of current user belongs to and also shows the group names. It is pretty useful if you want to understand the group memberships without numeric IDs. So if you are basically working in an environment which has a lot of users, if you just type -G, it's not pretty useful, because then you don't know who has access to what. If you type G and N, -G and N, you basically see all the other accesses the user basically has, the programs and the software. Interestingly, you can also use this ID command along with other hyphenated flag. So for example, if you type ID -U and if you type enter, it will basically display your user ID. In this case, I am the only user. Since that's the case, I have the user ID 1000. So this is pretty useful if whenever you are interested in understanding who's the user ID belonging to, whether it's the current user or not. Let's say if you want to display the group ID. In this scenario, you would basically club it with ID and -G. Remember, this is not the capital G which we used before. This is a camel case G. When you do that, again, since I am the only user, you can see that it is 1000. So this option basically prints the group ID. The command is pretty useful if you want to find out the primary group ID, GID of the user. With ID, you can instantly check whether the users and the group belong to which user it belongs to, which user and groups it belongs to. It basically gives you permissions and access levels. The command is essential for understanding your role and your rights within the system when you are working. So if you want to quickly check this in your workplace, it will definitely be different, or at your institution, it will definitely be different. Similarly, moving on, we will now work with another command called curl command. The curl command basically allows you to transfer data from or to a server. In this scenario, I already have a link. So for example, if I want to download a particular file on the internet, you basically get the link and basically type no. This option basically allows you to save the remote file with the name as you know within the system. In this case, I will just grab the link and I already have it. Let's say, sorry, I have to get this correct. Issue. Sorry guys, it's been, yeah, so once you get the link and when you enter, you basically get your information. So you see that the total amount of bits, the speed and the amount of time it has been spent, and the speed, you can see that this particular file has been downloaded. You can see that it's a 720 pixel picture of the Statue of Liberty, and you basically have downloaded it by sending a request to the Wikipedia server, and then we basically have it. So as to recap, the curl command basically is a command for transferring data from or to a server. So it basically is supported by the protocols which you basically come across daily when you are surfing the internet. It can be HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, or SOAP. The -o option basically lets the curl command basically save the remote file with the same name as a remote file, and the URL basically is the web address of the file that you want to download. So as you have seen, so it basically downloads that specific image data or file from the internet, and basically you have it in your current directory. In this case, as I have mentioned, the current working directory is YouTube. So it basically grabs that data and basically sends it through the HTTPS protocols, and therefore you have it saved on your current location. This is pretty useful as you can basically get all the data. So this is, interestingly, you can also fetch similarly data from a website. For example, if you it's a kind of web scraping, you can say, but not really. So if you type curl, let's say I'm interested in learning about Linux, I would like to scrape that data. Let's say again Wikipedia, or go to for everything. When you turn enter, it will, yeah, as you can see, that entire page has been scraped, and you basically, and it is returned. So as you can see, this is, if you look into it, it's the skeleton of the HTML page of that particular Wikipedia article on Linux. So you can basically see that this is the entire .html file, and there is some, it requires a lot of cleaning, but it's a primitive way of scraping data. In this context, it basically fetches and displays the HTML content of the Linux Wikipedia page. So it can retrieve HTML content from any specified web page, and basically it is displayed on your terminal. Another thing that you can do is, since we have downloaded a particular file on the Statue of Liberty, which is named as 720 pixel Liberty 02.jpg. That's a very computer like, it's not pretty sensible. So we would like to change that. So you can basically rename these files as you download it. So in order to demonstrate that, let's say you type curl o, and then let's say we are writing stat liberty.jpg, and then the link, and when you enter, it will again go and fetch that particular data, and when you type ls, you see that that particular file, image file of the Statue of Liberty, has been again downloaded, but this time, since we have already mentioned that we would like to rename it as Statue of Liberty.jpg, it basically downloads that particular file and also renames it. So here -o new name.jpg. Yeah, so this basically saves the downloaded file with the new name. This command basically downloads file image and also gets it stored in your current directory. Let's say if you are interested in downloading multiple files at once, that is also possible with curl. So let me grab it. Let's say I have a bunch of image links, and I would like to get these files one by one. So basically type curl o. Let's just have to type curl o, and then the link, the first link of the image. Basically go and get it, and get the first image, and then again curl o, -o, sorry, and then you get the second link. So guys, you are getting this. This is a pretty tough for me as of the moment. Let me get it. Yeah, I have gotten the second link. Space, yeah. So in this case, you can see that I have clubbed curl -o, the image link of the first image, followed by -o, and then the image link of the second image that I would like to do. In this case, it's just random flags from the United Nations. So when you type enter, it basically will go and fetch that information. So you can see that the details about the average speed and the amount of time spent in order to receive the packets for each of the for both the images, the operations for both have been displayed. So when you type ls, you can see both the images have been downloaded. So you can see that. Yeah, so the curl command is pretty versatile. It can basically get all this information for you. It can be allowed, it can be used to scrape essentially pages and basically get the HTML file. It's kind of primitive, but it requires a lot of processing, but it's still possible. You can download specific images, you can also download multiple files at once, and so on. Similarly, you can also upload file to a server, but for that you need a username and a password, and that's another story. But I would like to show you a basic structure. In this case, I am limited by the resources of my time. So in this case, if I type this particular command, say I like to change some aspects of it. Yeah, so you can see that curl is basically clubbed with -t and the local txt file. In this case, if I want to upload this local txt file into a web server, which is called userver, and you basically also need to give in login credentials. This is something that it would look like when if you are interested in uploading to a server. In this scenario, I am not able to do that because I don't have a server, but usually this is how the structure looks like. So -t local file.txt basically specifies which file is meant to be uploaded, and FTP basically is the protocol that we are mentioning. So the FTP server that we are mentioning, and basically you upload this file to that particular server, and basically you have the next section which basically talks about the --user and the username and password. So this is the server login credentials. So in a gist, this command basically uploads that local file.txt to that specified file transfer protocol server available, provided that you basically have the username and password. So curl is pretty handy and nifty. If you have a server, you can upload these kinds of data to it. It's highly useful and it's like a Swiss Army knife. Actually, it can handle so much in one go. As you can see, it's pretty versatile. Moving on, we will basically now talk about the find command. The find command basically can be used to locate specific files or directories based on your search criteria. Let's say I am interested in locating all the txt files in my directory. So let's say I type find dot name, and this is the name that I'm specifying. This is like, it shows that all the files which are ending with .txt basically will be shown. So if I type find of hyphen name and then I type enter, you can basically see that on my system these are all the text files which are available. So these text files, so these files are basically the files which end with .txt. So the command basically searches for all these files within the current directory as well as the side directories. So it's pretty useful if you want to specifically find files that you might not know where you have saved for a long time. We can also list out files which have been modified. So let's say we can basically look for all the types of files which have been modified in the last 7 days. Let's say for that I will structure it like find.type. In this case I'm mentioning it to look for files. So in this case I'm looking for all the files but not specific directories, and then I club it with mtime, the last modified time, so that would be 7 days. So within the last 7 days, which of the files have been modified? So let's say, yeah, you can see that within the last 7 days basically are the files that we just modified. So those are the files which have been modified. So you can basically use this in order to basically keep track of recent modifications and monitoring log updates, and checking up recent changes. In short, you can also do this to find out some other information. Let's say if you want to check for directories which are termed demo, let's say in this scenario, since we will use the same command, we will type find.type. In this case we are checking up directories, not particularly files, and then we will type name. In this case the name would be demo. Let's type demo, and when you type enter, yeah, so we basically have one directory called demo. So this is pretty useful. So you can say that the hyphen type D basically checks only for, limits the search to only directories, and hyphen name demo basically searches for the directories named demo. So you can see that this is how you basically compound several commands together in order to get a very specific result which is highly desired. So this basically lets you check your entire file system for this particular folder called demo without you wasting time. So this is highly useful. In short, in a gist, we can say that this command searches for directories named demo within the current directory as well as the subdirectories, and it is highly useful for locating specific directories in a large file system. Similarly, we can also look for empty files. That's another interesting thing. So let's say we will type the same thing, find.type, and then type files. We limit the search to files and then type empty. So when you type enter, so in this case it will look for all the files which are empty. So let's say enter. So you can see that there are two text files called file text.txt and findme.txt which are absolutely empty. So this is pretty useful. So type F again, hyphen type F basically limits the search to the files and not to the directories, and hyphen empty basically specifies that this criteria is only to be limited to empty files. So in short, we can say that this command finds and lists all the empty files within the current directory as well as the subdirectories. It's helpful in identifying and cleaning up unused files. Similarly, we can again modify the same command in order to search up specific files which are larger than 1 MB. Let's type find dot type f. In this case, we are looking for files which have the size of more than 1 MB. If I enter this, okay, in this case there are none. So let's try to change that. Let's say, yeah. So yeah, in this case, yeah, I have to change the result. I have to change the command. In this case, I have no files which are larger than 1 MB. But when I type find hyphen type f, in this case we are searching for all the files which have a size of approximately 1 MB. So these are the files. You can say, so there's a PY file, there's a JPEG file, there's a PNG file, there's a text files, and so on. So yeah, so basically hyphen size 1M, in this case 1M, basically signifies the size of the file, which is 1 MB. So this command basically searches for all the files which are 1 MB in size within the current working directories as well as the site directories, and it basically allows you to check for which are the files which are consuming your disk space. So as you can see, it's pretty interesting what can be done. So the find command is like a personal search engine. You can basically manage and navigate complex directory structures efficiently. It basically helps you locate files and directories based on your criteria, making file management highly easy. So yeah, there are a lot of use cases to this. So the next command that we will be talking about is top. So this command basically manages or keeps track of processes and resources based on their usage. So let's type top. If you type top and enter, you will see all the process IDs, which are, this is like a dynamic real-time view of your system processes. And yeah, so it basically gives you a very basic outlook. You can see that in real time, it's this is list it keeps changing based on the different kinds of programs which are running. So in this case, you can see that, we basically can see the system processes, the memory usage, CPU usage in real time. It's highly useful for managing resource intensive processes. Yeah, and you can also basically sort processes by memory usage. If you type shift M, you have basically now shifted the entire this list in the form of the on the basis of the amount of memory being used. So that's what shift M combined with top basically gives you. So it basically has sorted all the processes based on the memory. So yeah, this basically lets you identify which processes are consuming the most memory. Similarly, you can also sort the processes by shift CPU usage. So if you type shift, it's not type, sorry. If you hold the button shift plus P, it has again reformatted the entire list. So now it's prioritizing the amount of CPU which is being consumed. So this is it's highly useful. Like if you want to check out which programs are taking up the most CPU resource, which basically allows you to identify which processes and resources are being used the most. So yeah, this is pretty nifty. If you want to exit, you write down code X. Wait a minute, guys. Check. Yeah, if you press Control C, it exits this list, active monitoring list. Now, if you want to filter the processes based on the user, if you have a local area network or a wide area network and you are the administrator and you want to look up all the essential details about which are the users which are working, you basically type, in this case, I know my username. You type top-u And the username, Linux is my username. This is an arbitrary name in this case. In your case, it will differ. So when you type -u username, it will filter the display. It will filter this active list on the basis of the amount of resource which is being consumed. In this case, only the commands which I have recently executed are consuming some amount of CPU and memory resource. So yeah, this is highly useful and basically lets you see which are the processes which are being used by the user. And yeah, you can basically press Q in order to exit certain programs. In this case, I will not demonstrate that because I do not have any essentially I do not have any specific programs that I want to quit. So yeah, the top command basically turns your terminal into a live dashboard as it lets you manage and monitor specific system performances that you would like to look into, whether which resources are consuming what, how much memory. You can sort them based on the amount of memory that is being used, amount of CPU resource that is being used, and so on. So it's highly sensible to use. The next command that I will be talking about is the copy command. The copy command or CP command basically copies files or directories. In this case, I have a bunch of text files. Let's say I would like to make a backup of the fruits list in my example.txt, and let's rename it as backup underscore example.txt, and then I enter, let's say ls, and when I try to look into let's say what are the files which let's see whether it has been okay. Let's try that again. There seems to be an issue. Okay, yeah, maybe I made a spelling mistake, but yeah, you can see that backup underscore example.txt has been created, and you can see all the lists involving the fruit names are here. So you can see that the cp command basically copies the files, basically the file contents from example.txt, which is the source file, into the destination file, which is backup underscore example.txt. So this is highly useful in creating backups of any essential files. Similarly, you can do the same process in order to make backups of particular directories. So let's say I have demo directory. In this case, I would like to specify, since there are contents which are within the demo folder, so you would have to also combine -r, which is a flag which basically lets copy command know that you have to recursively copy the contents of the directory demo into backup underscore demo. When you enter this and you do ls, and you can see that particular backup of that directory has been created. So you can type tree backup underscore demo. Yeah, tree is a new command that I would like to barge in, which is basically a great command which lets you see what are the content and the file structure of the folders and the subdirectories which are present within it. So you can basically see a bird's eye view of the entire file structure. So yeah, as I mentioned, cp command basically copies the entire content of this particular file, folder, demo directory and its contents to a new directory named demo underscore backup. This is essential as you can basically duplicate entire directory file systems. let's say you would like, let's say we are making a new, let's create a new, um, for a file location, let's say destination backup. So yeah, destination backup is a folder that we have created, and now you would like to basically store or copy the backup of several files to this particular location. If you want to do that, you can basically type, let's say we would like to get hold of files such as new file .txt, I'm sorry, .txt, and then we type numbers .txt, and basically we save it to destination backup. You can see that that command has been executed. Let's see the contents of destin backup. So you can see that we basically sent a backup, or we copied the files numbers and new file txts into this destination backup, which we basically made. So you can see that it is highly versatile in nature, that allows it to copy specifically any number of files to this specific mentioned location. It is highly convenient in order for you to copy batch of several files at once. So you basically again save a lot of time instead of copying and pasting specific files one by one. So this is highly interesting. So yeah, so you can also do the same again with an interesting twist, if you would like to say that. If you want specific confirmation prompts, let's say I would like to basically, yeah, let's say I have numbers, right? So if I create numbers, new numbers, let's say, okay, let's type new number, new number of txt, and I would like to prompt any information before I overwrite. Let's say, okay, in this case, let's try to use backup log. Yeah, let's use that in order to backup underscore log, and then I type. So you can see that I have, oh sorry, I had to change this. So if I type cp-i numbers.txt backup underscore log.txt, and when I enter this, it will basically prompt me whether I would like to overwrite the contents of backup log.txt. So this is interesting. If I type y, it will do that. So in this case, if I type cat, let's see what is the contents. Let's see a bunch of numbers. Let's see what are the contents of backup log. Yeah, so you can see that this has successfully been overwritten. So it's pretty versatile. You can basically copy the numbers to this specific file, but with some prompt confirmation. So in a way, it basically prevents any kind of accidental overwriting. You can also do the same while you are doing this process again with some other, if you are on a wide area network or a local area network with multiple users, and when you are doing this kind of an activity, you would like to preserve certain attributes of the file, such as ownership. So for that, you would basically club the same, you would do the same. For example, you have a new file, but in this case you type p -p. So that would basically preserve the ownership of this particular attribute. So this is highly sensible in order for you to basically perform effortless duplication of important files, directories, and you can basically keep backups of as well as organize the content in a single command. It is versatile for management and offers options for tailoring the process of copying. So this is highly highly recommended to basically dive into. You basically have to, get your hands dirty in order to get started. You have to, I would definitely recommend you to start doing these commands in order for you to get more familiar. Since you can already see our terminal looks pretty, expanded. We have written a lot of stuff and we have gotten a lot of outputs. We can basically clear that with the help of the clear command. When you enter that, you basically get a new slate. So let's do this. Let's move on to the next command. The next command is a command called more. So in order for you to basically view the file content one page at a time, let's say you have a huge lot of content which you would like to view, but in this case you would like to limit it to something, some, let's say you have this type more new file. You see. So yeah, in this case, yeah, this is not a huge file. Okay, let's try to change that. If I type bi, yeah, let's try to just try one. Let's just give it random numbers in order to make the file a little bit just in order to demo this. Instead of finish, let's say, yeah, let's try that again. If we type more new file.txt, since you just saw me enter a bunch of random text into this large file, and when you enter this, you basically see only the top, but there is more. So the more command basically, so you can see the first 25% of that particular file has been displayed onto the terminal, because it's a large file. And if you want to view more, you basically, if you want to just basically limit the amount of content that you are viewing so as not to overwhelm yourself or not to overwhelm the screen, you basically do this. And when you press enter, it will basically scroll down like as you do in a normal PDF file. So yeah, so the more command basically lets you scroll through your entire content of that specified file. So yeah, so if you want to scroll line by line, you do this with the help of the enter button. But if you want to scroll to the next page, you would do that with the help of space. When you press space, it would just jump to the next page of your large file. This can also be demonstrated with the help of the B key on your keyboard. If you press B, so in this case it will scroll back one page. So the B is like you're just going back to the previous page. So let's say if you press space and if you'd like to go back, in this case I have already run out of pages. It's not a large file, but that you get the idea. So you basically are able to view the file in a very restricted manner. It lets you view this content in a limited manner, so you don't get overwhelmed. Your screen remains pristine, so you can just scroll through this or even read through this. That's the idea. You basically read through it like the pages. So one page, you get one page and then the next page. And yeah, so we can also do the same with the help of more. Let's say if you want to do the same process for, let's say, backup, let's go log txt, and let's say we have another let's check out Python demo. In this case, Python demo.py. It will do the same for you. So in this case, you are basically viewing multiple files together. So in this case, you can see that the contents of backup underscore log or txt as a bunch of numbers, and once you just press enter, it will basically move on to the next file. And when you can see that there is 4% more, so it's not a big file. And when you press enter, you basically scroll one by one line at a time, and you can basically see. And if you press space, you basically skip to the end. So you can see that you can view multiple files at once. Yeah, and yeah, you can also do this step again if you would like. If you want to basically start displaying the file contents from a specific line, you can mention that specific lines. Let's say I would like to view the contents of new file.txt from the line number 10. So you specify more plus 10 and new file.txt, and when you combine all of this together and enter, you are basically looking at the text files from the starting from line number 10. So yeah, so you can see that more basically is highly useful if you want to navigate large files, if you want to manage your work environment, allows you to scroll through the content at your own pace, look for specific sections and lines. So this is highly useful, and it's useful only if you are dealing with lengthy big files. So yeah, let's move on. And yeah, so the next command that I would like to talk about would be the tail command. So let's say you are interested in looking at the last few lines of a file. Yeah, as you can say, it's a no-brainer. It's like head and tail. So yeah, I'm interested in looking at the last few lines of the file. So let's say I would like to check out the last few lines of, let's say, Python demo.py. If I type that, I get the last 10 lines of that particular file. You can again do the same with some other file. Let's say tail new file. Yeah, you can see that the last few 10 lines of that new file.txt has been displayed. So yeah, this command basically, in short, by default, it basically shows you the last 10 lines of backup underscore log txt, and with new file and python.demo file, you can do this again and again. It's pretty useful in that sense. In a minute, and a small minute mistake. Yeah, let's try that again. Yeah, so yeah, this works pretty much as as the name says. Yeah, interestingly, you can also display the last 20 lines. You can change it. So you have to again club it with a new flag. So the -n and 20. You basically are displaying the last 20 lines of a file called new file.txt. So you can see that you basically, in the default section, we were only able to do the first 10 as the last 10 lines. Now, since you have modified it with the help of -n and 20, you basically are able to view much more than the previous, from the last, from beginning from the end of the file to the 20 lines above. You are able to view all the contents. So yeah, so this is pretty interesting. As you can see, there are several other use cases for this as well. So if you type, let's say, if you want to check the last, we want to check the last lines of the files. Let's say in this case example.txt numbers. To do that, you are able to basically check. You can see that it has also specified the header with the name of the file, so the user is not confused. So you can see the last 10 lines of the files, example.txt and number.txt, has also been depicted. So this is highly useful in order for you to check quickly what is the end of file like. So yeah, so you basically get a real-time log viewer in your terminal. It basically keeps you updated on the latest file changes. and you really ensure that you have updates on this kind of information. So yeah, so that's it for today. I think we jumped into a lot of commands, and we have twisted our and expanded our um, idea about Linux terminal commands, and I guess the best way of learning about these commands is by doing these commands. So yeah, and guess that's the end of the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.